Hey everyone, and welcome back to a new video. This video is about a really quick overview of what we shared last week, and then the goal is just to help you understand how we can actually solve some real life problem using data and some analysis, most specifically for this particular case, data visualization. So just to give you a context, 2 years ago, I participated in this hackathon, and I was one of the analysts on the team. And the goal was just to build an app where users can track how many hours a day, how many hours they sleep every day, and then from that we can recommend them, okay, if they are in a good range or if they need to make some adjustment based on whatever results they had. It's recommended in real life to sleep 7 to 9 hours every day, but for some reasons, people just can't sleep more than 5 hours a day, sometimes even less than 5 hours. So, the goal is first of all to understand why those users are having such a hard time sleeping every day, and then using that the answer to that why to start recommending users about how they can increase that 5 hours every day to maybe 7 to 9 hours. And then if you're someone fortunate like me who sleeps 7, 8, 9 hours and sometimes 10 hours every day, you don't have to worry about that, but it's not the case for everyone. And bad sleep means bad habits. You know what I mean? It's always something internal or external that is driving that particular factor. So we then were given that data set to start analyzing and understand um, what is the reason behind um, such a lower number of sleep hours every day for some users. So we got the data from 400 people that were kind enough to give us our data. And then using those data, we just try to understand, okay, what's going on? How can we use these? What are the important variable in the data set? And how can we actually use those data to help users? So this is a very important topic. I mean, it's about mental health, and you don't know how many people are struggling with mental health, and everything starts with sleep. A good sleep means your day is going to be good. You're going to have so much time, you're going to have so much fun, you're going to have um, just like so much more joy than someone who doesn't sleep well just because of the way you spend your night. So this is a very important topic, and it's pretty good because I choose this because everyone can relate to this story. You know, sometimes you just sleep, you just had a bad night, and then your day is following up. You have a bad night, you're gonna have a bad day. That's for sure. And then, yeah, the data set is just about that. We have the data for 400 people from different places, different genders, different ages, different occupation. And then some of them had a pretty good sleep, some of them did not had a pretty good sleep. So the focus was mostly to understand those who do not have a pretty good sleep so we can start recommending that. But before giving recommendation, we needed to understand why this is happening to them. So as you can see in the data, we have different occupations, software engineer, doctor, sales representative, teacher, and with the different sleep hours on average, you know, if they're overweight, if they have blood pressure, I mean the blood pressure, if they have some sort of heart disease, and, you know, that's just pretty much what the data looks like. And then we just started doing some basic EDA, like missing values, and there was no missing value describing some of the variables in the data set. And then we decided to focus on sleep disorder here because sleep disorder directly impacts sleep quality, and therefore it impacts sleep hours, number of sleep duration. So if you have a certain sleep disorder, it's likely that you don't sleep well enough. And if you don't sleep well enough every day, you probably will not sleep as many hours as a regular person. So the majority, thank God, the majority of our users, over 200 of our users, having no sleep disorder, and then some of them are having sleep apnea, some of them are having insomnia every day. So, you know, people are struggling a lot at night. Yeah, and then we're just trying to analyze the occupation on average of those people. Majority were nurses, some of them were doctors, engineers, lawyer, teacher, accountant, salesperson, software engineers, scientists, and sales representative, and one person was a manager. we have a pretty good variety of occupations here, which is good because we need to have a balanced and diverse data to have accurate results. And then we try to understand how sleep disorder is um, changing over age. And then we're just realizing this is from this box plot, we're just realizing that people with no sleep disorder usually tend to be younger. And then the older you are, the more likely you are to have maybe sleep apnea or insomnia. So this is one of the key result from our analysis. As you get older, you may be, exposed to this type of sleep disorder, and therefore you may be, um, at risk of a reduced number of sleep hour every day. This is one key information we get just by analyzing the data and plotting some visualization. And then we also try to understand the variability of sleep disorder versus sleep duration, which, as we just said, those are very correlated, highly correlated, so we don't have to like come back to this again. And we just try to understand if there's like a correlation between stress level and sleep disorder. And then as you can see from this plot, people with sleep disorder tends to be a lot stressed than people with no sleep disorder, which means higher stress level means higher sleep disorder means higher stress level, and higher stress level means sleep quality of sleep is going to be reduced, and then sleep quality decreases, therefore sleep duration decreases. Sorry, my bad. Having a hard time here. But yeah, we see the impact of stress level on sleep disorder, and therefore the impact of stress level on sleep quality as well. And then we just try to do some of just trying to play around with the variable, try to understand if there should be like a correlation between the BMI category and sleep disorder at the same time. BMI is body mass index for those who are obese, those who have normal weight, those who are overweight. And then we also just realizing the majority of people with normal weight have no sleep disorder. And then people who are usually obese or overweight, have sleep disorder. That means, in terms of like our context, being overweight is actually bad, actually has a bad influence in your sleep quality. And if it does have a bad influence in your sleep quality, it therefore has a bad influence on your sleep duration. So you just got to find a way to keep your body mass index in a normal range, which is 20 to 25 for an average person. So if you tend to be over that 25, just trying to find a way to lose some weight and therefore increase your sleep duration. And those are some of the recommendations we're giving to our users, just based on information. And then if we notice that person is overweight, we're going to start recommending that person where you're overweight, so you need to lose some weight. By losing some weight, you increase your daily life, and then therefore you're increasing your sleep quality and your sleep duration. And then we give those recommendations to our users so they understand what it's actually driving such a low number of sleep hours every day. So thanks to this basic data visualization, we have those insight, and we can start recommending giving some tips to our user. And that was overall the goal of our app and the goal of our hackathon. Yeah, this is very basic, but something that everyone can relate to in real life. So it's pretty good. And then we kind of did the same thing about gender to see if maybe male or female are having like a different type of behavior when it comes to sleep disorder. But on average, it was kind of no, it's not because you're a male that you are less exposed to have such a low number of sleep hours every day. No, it really just depends on other factors. And then something pretty interesting, the occupation. Looking at this plot, we have occupation vertically and the sleep disorder horizontally. I used to think doctors we have such a bad time to sleep every day, but this is not the case. The majority of doctors are actually having such a pretty good sleep, which is a surprising insight, but it does change my my view of how doctors, maybe how doctors' lifestyle is. I used to think those guys are always stressed because of, you know, their job and what are the requirements for them every day. You're like dealing with patients. Maybe they might have some sort of stress level, but on average, they're having a pretty good life. However, if you're a nurse, you tend to have some sort of sleep disorder, and therefore you tend to sleep less hours. So maybe nurses need to really understand that their job is impacting negatively to the number of hours they sleep every day, and they should take some extra steps. For instance, if we have a nurse in our data, and then we find out that because that person is a nurse and they sleep less than 7 hours a day, we start recommending other techniques like maybe go for a walk 1 hour every day, start eating healthy, start hitting the gym. All those recommendations are because of that person's uh job title, and then we kind of give recommendation. Still based on this particular um plot, we have more insight about occupation and how occupation is impacting sleep disorder and therefore sleep quality. Yeah. So after doing that, doing those analysis, we can clearly see that age, sleep duration, BMI, body mass index, and occupation are the main factor that impact sleep disorder and therefore the duration of sleep. So we're gonna look at those factors in our app now, and then just considering that, and then look at if someone is having like if someone's overweight, if someone's occupation is a nurse, if someone is getting older, and then only based on that we're giving some recommendation. It's going to be very personalized. It was very personalized. Our app was actually on Apple for a few months before it got, I don't know what, something happens and it's no longer there. But people were using it and we have some pretty good feedback just based on our analysis. So yeah, this is just the context of how data visualization can help you solve some of those problems. But first of all, understanding the data, and by understanding the data, you understand the situation of users, and using that information, you just creating something pretty big, pretty impactful. So I'm glad that we were able to just have an overview of how powerful good data and then good visualization is to solve some of the real life problem. And I hope you like it. We do it. We are probably going to do it more often in the future, but that was a good overview, and I'm glad that we did it. Again, if you have any questions, you let me know. Ping me right in the comment section, and I'll be here to respond to your questions. So, thank you.